I'm hitting record now. Thank you so much for your permission to record this meeting so others will be able to access it. We spent the first 5 minutes of the meeting doing a new practice that I called lobby time, which was just 5 to 10 minutes to allow us to all enter the meeting. It's kind of the equivalent of opening up your office door early, but the meeting hasn't started and people are getting cups of coffees, but nobody's actually sat down at the conference table yet. We were trying for that vibe. So we've scheduled ourselves a full 90 minutes to play and work together. At the end of this, I encourage us to continue reflecting. So we might reflect back, you know what? 90 minutes is not enough, or we could do this in an hour. So I look forward to all those pieces of feedback. Last week was really productive and really useful. And I touched base with some of us afterwards, just to kind of gain some knowledge about how are we doing, what's best practice. I'm gonna talk us through what we have planned in the next hour. We're gonna do our introductions. I'm gonna repeat this out loud over and over again. I'm doing transparent modeling of best practices in digital communication. So I'm gonna be narrating stuff as I'm working through it sometimes, or talking about a weird communications glitch in some of these systems, and then maybe even asking folks, how did you handle it? For the meeting as a whole, you can see our agenda, which is just really detailed in our Google Drive notes. So I'm doing point 1, which is framing. We're going to introduce ourselves. We invite you to share your name, your gender pronoun, where you're located physically in the world. If you can, please do a land acknowledgement. We're still figuring out best practices for land acknowledgements. And there's actually an amazing online praxis section tomorrow where folks are going to be gathering to exchange the different ways they're doing land acknowledgements in a digital shared place. And then, so we're asking you your name, gender pronouns, where you're located in the world, you know, a land acknowledgement, and then just talk about just share a challenge that you're working on. And I'm realizing we didn't put in that list, but if it feels good, share your artistic affiliation, if that feels useful to the conversation. I recognize that for some of us, it's like, I just want to be a human being and here's my name. But if it's useful to share your artistic affiliation, please do. So we're going to go around, share our names, gender pronouns, locations, land acknowledgement, and the challenges that you're trying to solve right now or what you're thinking about. Then we're going to go around and do some sharing about, this is something that I did or I witnessed. And it could be, this is something I did or I witnessed this week, or a practice I did or I witnessed in the last couple of years that has been a productive and useful digital producing practice. And then if there's time, and I'm hoping that there's going to be time, and that maybe the bulk of our time will be spent having juicy dialogues, talking about some of the issues. And we've got a fun starter question, which felt like a useful conversational frame, which was, you know, what are the impacts or the effects of physical exchange? You know, not only audiencing for the work, but also developing and creating the work. What is possible to translate to a digital space? What can't be translated? What's uniquely possible in digital spaces? So that was our sort of kickoff question for that final part of creative dialogue. We're not married to it, so if there's another conversation topic that you feel super passionate about, add it to the notes, and we can talk about that too. So I'm going to get us started. I'm going to model actually, let me say this out loud. Don't know who text messaged me from 413, but thank you. This was a really good suggestion. So this suggestion was, hey, oh, it's Sabrina, hi. We spent so much of our precious time during the first digital call on intros, perhaps shortening, but not having to name the next person to do the intro. So what you're naming is something that a lot of us have been experiencing, because in Zoom, it does a different order of the faces, right? So none of us are experiencing the equivalent of us all standing in a circle and having everyone be in a discrete place. it always feels good to share the power of managing the space by having the next person go, and now you will speak. But it's very difficult, especially if you've got more people than fit on your screen participating, to track who's spoken, who has not spoken. Some people have been doing a practice of, I'll volunteer to go next. So the person's talking and introducing themselves, and then when they're done talking, they look in the chat and they go, oh, this person said they can go next. And they just pick a person from the chat. That's been a process that's worked. Some folks have defaulted to, you know what? I'm just gonna facilitate and call on people, and I'll be the one that tracks. And we'll use my order on my screen. And others have been doing this sort of mixed thing where it takes a little more time, but it does help you to put names to faces. I also invite you to do this trick. If you can, if you are on a computer, go ahead and add something to your name. I'm clicking rename. I'm gonna add my gender pronouns. What? Oh yes, that just happened. Boom, look at that. I just did that. I have my gender pronouns on there. Rename, little tiny tricks. Okay, so that was way more framing than we needed. Let's do this meeting. I'm Claudia Alick. My gender pronouns are they, their, she, hers, interchangeably. I'm speaking to you from the Bay Area, land of the Ohlone people. The people are still alive. My practice is a transmedia social justice company. And the challenge that I am thinking really hard about right now is I'm trying to figure out what new work needs to be developed right now for the producing practice we're going to want 2 years from now. And it's very hard to like forecast the future when life is so uncertain. So that's the headspace challenge I've been working on. I'm going to, let's try the, folks volunteer to go next. So I'm gonna pass the mic to my other co-facilitator, Kholoud, but then somebody else just go into the chat, say everybody, and say I'm willing to go next. Let's see what we'll experiment. We'll see how that works. All right, go ahead. I'm passing it to you and I'm muting myself.
Sounds great. Hello, my name is Kholoud Sawaf, and my gender pronouns are she, her, hers. I am speaking to you from Fayetteville, from Northwest Arkansas, Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I acknowledge that those of us who live in Northwest Arkansas are occupying the land of the Caddo, the Osage, and the Quadopa. And I'm right now alive with the fact of just as someone who practices theater in a very traditional format, I'm alive of what that looks like now and the things I miss and the challenges of that kind of liveliness that comes naturally in the theater form and in that setting. And I will mute myself.
Hi. I'm Sabrina Hamilton. I'm in Belchertown, Massachusetts, where I run the Co-Festival Performance. My pronouns are in my name on the little picture in front of you, she, her. This is the land of the Pocumtuck people. And a challenge I am facing now is trying to decide what should go digital and what resources should be saved for what should be kept for the live and not diluted. And also to make sure that artists are not feeling like they should give everything away for free. And I will mute myself.
I think that's me. I'm Deborah Eliezer, she, her, hers. I'm the co-artistic director of Fool's Fury Theater, and I'm an associate artist at Golden Thread. I am struggling with the idea of honoring liveness and the work that we make in theater that is dedicated to being together with people in rooms, and the new constraints under which we now live, and also kind of wondering what the new edge is that pushes the envelope of liveness, but that also uses these media, new media opportunities. I also use the word constraint alternatively, but I can also look at it as an opportunity to kind of say, well, what is another way or other ways that we can push the envelope of liveness. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Phil Lowery. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the education director at San Francisco Shakespeare Festival. I'm calling in from Oakland, California, where I live, on the land of the Ohlone people. I don't know exactly which language group, so that's some research I need to do for the next time we do a land acknowledgement. And my immediate concerns and challenges really have to do with how to reinvent ourselves very quickly. Specifically, I'm looking at how to move education programs into an online format for some people we're currently working with. So we're reinventing every week, and also trying to figure out how to go forward. The other big thing in my mind with every session is how to reframe this whole thing so that we aren't just all feeling oppressed by it, but trying to look with every session in terms of, okay, now what does this new medium offer us? How can we, we're used to live theater practice. We don't get to be in the same room telling stories with each other the way we're used to. And that can be really, there's a real sense of grief and loss over that. And I'm trying to balance that in every conversation with, okay, but what can we do now that we have this? And in what ways, there are definitely some technical challenges and some equity challenges regarding who has what kind of technical access. At the same time, there are also some, in some ways, maybe we can make things a little bit more equitable in certain regards. There's how we see and interact with people. So anyway, those are my immediate challenges.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Ennals. I'm the artistic director of San Francisco Shakespeare Festival. I use she, her pronouns. I am dialing in from Mount Davidson in San Francisco, the beautiful land of the Ohlone. And I want to just echo, thank you, everybody. And also say that I'm just deeply concerned for artists and their financial well-being right now, and how do we pay them for the work that they, out of love, are giving us for free, and also how do we take care of their mental health as this goes on, because it's going to go on for such a long time. And yeah, those are my primary concerns at the moment.
Hi, I'm Erin Merritt. I'm also calling from the unceded lands of the Ohlone, and Phil, I believe we're in the Chochenyo area. And I'm kind of affiliated with a number of different groups, but also a freelancer. And so that's one of my concerns is, how am I getting paid? But also, how are we all getting paid? I'm really concerned about the loss of theaters that are going to come out of this. How are theaters going to stay alive so that we can be ready when we are allowed to be together again? Like Deborah said, how do we maximize this to move our field forward as opposed to feeling stuck? How do we, in the quickest time frame, learn the technical things that we need to learn, rather than everybody having to do the same research? Where do we could just have somebody download that for us? I'm hoping this will start that. And yeah, how do we use this moment to raise awareness among the public that artists are people that they absolutely need, that are critical to their sanity and to the society, and therefore they want to pay us for our work? Thanks.
I'm Ariella. I use the pronouns she, her, hers. I'm coming to you from Novato, California, the land of the Coast Miwok. And I'm a director, theater educator, working with Erin, actually, and Mickey, who will introduce herself after me, on the Bay Area Theater Festival, Women's Theater Festival. And I'm struggling right now both with community accountability, how can we show up for each other, and also my own practice as an artist, how I can continue to further that, connect with people, and tell the future. Not telling the future, but how to prepare myself best for what our field will continue to evolve into. I really appreciate this idea that we're not going back to how things were, but are trying to vision how things will be and what we can create together, moving our field forward to be a more equitable and representative place for all people. I think that's it. Thanks.
I'm Michaela Goldhaber, Mickey. I am the lead instigator of the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival, which had just begun. And okay, we all know this. I'm sorry, I'm still processing a lot of grief. I've been working with our sisters at the Women's Theater Festival of North Carolina, who pivoted really quickly and created a virtual play group, and they have already produced a couple of virtual performances using Zoom, and then putting that onto Twitch and live streaming on Twitch. And what they're doing, I have found really moving and engaging. And so I have encouraged other members of the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival to join that wonderful bandwagon, and I've been helping them and supporting them and amplifying them. So very practically, I'm working with Ariella to set up a Bay Area Women's Theater Festival Twitch channel, and am personally working with actors from my recently opened and closed production of The Lady Scribblers to make a virtual Scribblers. And just really trying to find ways to get work out there with a kind of urgency that I probably should be examining more and taking more time to think through. But since they already got it going, I've just kind of been trying to go with what they're doing and amplify that. And I know I missed a lot of them. I'm sorry, Berkeley, Ohlone people, and Rycrip's Disabled Women's Theater Company is my other.
The ways that we decide to introduce ourselves are not prescriptive. So it's a script that we're trying to do, but it's okay if you miss something. I wanted to make sure that Hassan was accessing the chat, so that, because it seems like this queuing up via chat was actually working. I was quite excited. We just learned a thing that totally works. Are you good? I'm seeing a thumbs up. Thank you so much. All right, so I believe, is Rachel the next person who's queued up? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was, but Hassan, it looked like you were saying something, and you were muted. So I just want to invite you to unmute yourself and say what you were going to say.
Hassan was saying yes to my direct question of, are you accessing the chat, and were you able to queue up like everyone else?
Okay, great.
Oh, well, I was muted, so I unmuted now, and I'm a bit of a Luddite. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. And I kept getting up and down everybody because I was trying to fix this lighting in my stupid studio so you guys could see me. I promised to be ready the next time, but I'm more or less going to just listen today because I missed the last one last week, so I don't know exactly what's going on. I don't have a pronoun. I'm the founder and producing director of LA Subway Shakespeare Project here in Los Angeles. We're in the beautiful Arroyo Seco, right near South Pasadena. I'm sure Claudia is aware of that area. And finally, great meeting you, Claudia, in the flesh. Well, somewhat. Yeah. But anyway, I should know more about this technology because, as Claudia knows, we are a theater company without walls. We have 22 episodes up. What we do, we take tiny snippets of Shakespeare and from all the plays, and we do it at the new Metro subway and light rail stops. We do it in the parking lots. We do it on the ramps. We did a couple on the trains, and we're going to do more on the trains. But if you guys want to see us, just Google in LA Subway Shakespeare Project. And we're finally in a position where when you do that, we come up now. We're happy about that. Just Google LA Subway Shakespeare Project. We have 22 episodes. And again, like I said, we're a theater company without walls. And we were supposed to shoot last Sunday morning. And we canceled. And we canceled because of the virus. And I was going to be in that one. I was going to play Montano and Othello. I usually direct and shoot, and I hadn't did Shakespeare in maybe 20 years, and I was rehearsing, and we had to cancel. We even joked how, because my first AD, he was a little nervous. My actors wanted to do it, but my first AD, John Freeland, some of you guys might be familiar with him. He's a theater professor at Cal Poly. He was going to direct. I was really looking forward to being directed by John, but we even joked that we were going to stand in the parking lot and screen the lines across the parking lot. So there would be like a 6-foot distance in between. But we canceled, and we're going to do it in a couple of weeks, probably in a couple of months. So I'm talking too much, Claudia, so I'll let someone else talk.
Thanks, Hassan. I'm glad you jumped in. So I'm Rachel Grossman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here in Washington, D.C. on the occupied territory of the Piscataway and the Nagachatunk. I have to say that the thing that's most pressing right now is that I start, since March 11th, I've been charged by the University of Maryland to transition the production of She Kills Monsters by Queen Nguyen that I was planning to direct since September, with their undergrads performing and their MFA design students designing. They invited me to think about how to transition it from a live production to a digital production into a digital format. I had a meeting with the design team on the 14th, and I have spent since the 14th to this moment thinking about how to do that with them. And none of them are trained in thinking about that. I don't know shit about, and that's like a technical term, which I'm sure you're all aware of. I don't know shit about TV production. And I know very little about digital. I mean, I know, as much as theater teaches me about digital media, I was experimenting with putting Twitter and texting and whatnot in theater productions in like 2013. So this all feels like boring to me, and they don't, like, I just had to yell at the MFA lighting designer about an hour ago, and he was like, I don't think lighting is important anymore. And I was like, how the fuck are we gonna see anybody if lighting isn't important anymore? I'm making a play, I'm making a live theatrical production on the internet right now. And everything else everybody says, and I love you all. Okay, I'm done.
Let me unmute myself. Hello, my name is Tanya Neumeyer. I'm a poet and I know it and I like to show it. Spoken word artist, so I have a real distinct crossover with theater. My pronouns are they, them. I'm coming at you live through the Zoom from Toronto, traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Petun, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and Mississauga of the New Credit people. So it's always been a meeting place here. We hosted our second slam, March 22nd, and we'll be hosting our third slam. I put the link to that poetry slam online Friday, April 3rd. I'll be your host. I'm noticing how the arts, through my experience, are perpetuating themselves in a underpaid format, and kind of somehow shocked, but like, because you would think like our time has come because we can pivot so creatively, but I just see that same bias where we're invaluable and somehow therefore underpaid. But I did do a first full-length 1-hour poetry kind of creative writing workshop live on Instagram through one of our neighborhood arts organizations, Arts at Tobacco. So happy to chat about how that transitioning poetry workshopping, which I typically do with students in schools, how that's going online. And since I hear some feelings of the times, I thought I'd read you a link to an article, just a quick quote from my friend Andrew Kushner. Theater artists are never really interrupted. We are community inclined and prone to staying in motion. Like water, we'll work our way through the cracks until we emerge from this very cracked time. With any luck, we'll be among those facilitating the social and spiritual recovery this historic crisis will require. So hope that's inspiring. The full article is in our Google Doc, and I look forward to our conversation.
Has everyone had a chance to speak and introduce themselves? Brilliant. Excellent, my colleagues.
It appears that I'm on here twice, and I'm just wondering if there's another person from my organization that hasn't spoken that's using. Oh, there you are. And Pamela, you can rename yourself in like the upper right corner of your box, which would also maybe be useful. Oh, I'm so glad.
That's brilliant.
Upper right corner of my box. Oh, rename. There I am.
I know, right?
Okay. I was hoping, since I was on there as Deborah, to just hide. But no, dang it. Somebody caught me out. So hi, my name is Pamela Hollings. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am in San Francisco, which is the land of Ohlone. And now, of course, I can't remember which people it is. Anyway, it will come to me, and I'll say that later. I am an ensemble member at Fool's Fury and a board member at Fool's Fury. I'm the literary director at Three Girls Theatre. We just cancelled our festival. Boo, boo, boo. And I'm with the Yat Bentley's Centre for Performance, where we are now teaching all of our acting classes online, which is weird and kind of okay, I think. I don't know, it's very weird. So that's me. I have missed a lot of this, so I am here to listen, and glad to see you all. That's it.
Brilliant. So I'm realizing that we're not doing live note taking where we're not taking live minutes. So none of us are transcribing what you're saying. What we are trying to do is to create a text document that would be easy to access after we all left, that might have highlights of learnings, big questions we ask that we think other people need to be possibly noodling on that might inform future conversations, and links. Y'all just dropped so many details about your festivals or projects that have been canceled, postponed. Drop them links in the Google Drive document, because it brings me so much joy to be able to access your practices asynchronously by clicking on those links and doing a deep dive into the different spaces where you're talking about your work. Just pausing for a quick moment to open us up to a moment of reflection. How did we feel about that way of introducing ourselves? Thumbs up?
It was more efficient, but we still got to hear relevant details, which I appreciated.
I will share that I appreciated not calling on people. I dislike that way of facilitating. So I love not calling on folks. I really enjoyed that. Yay. All right. Hassan, I continue to mute you on purpose. And it's because when you have a bunch of folks in the same meeting, you can quickly get that weird thing that happens where there's a feedback loop of your computer listening to the thing, and it just creates like a tiny little hum. So I encourage us all, if we can, mute ourselves when we're not speaking, but then it means you do have to remember to unmute yourself. So another pattern I've noticed in all my meetings is people reminding me, Claudia, you're muted. So we've already slipped into this practice where folks have been, like, folks have shared their challenges. Like, these are some of the problems or the big ideas I'm noodling on. It would be amazing if we could have a conversation about value and money, because yes, our work is invaluable right now. But it's kind of amazing that at the same time, everyone's like, I need all of your cultural production, I'm losing my mind. They still want it for free. So I look forward to having that exchange and conversation, and maybe just how do we even exchange resources equitably in these digital contexts? But before we pivot to like some large, juicy conversations, it would be super useful to just hear some case studies of this is what I've done, or this is what I've witnessed in terms of ways of producing that are successful during a pandemic. So that is the frame for the useful producing practices we are sharing with each other. And I've got my little list of some of the things that I have seen and witnessed in the past week. But before I start to talk, is there anyone else who could share either a project that they've witnessed or a project that they are actively working on that is a useful way of having a cultural production in an age of pandemic? I see Erin with their hand up, and I'm going to say, please, Erin, go right ahead.
Yeah, I don't still know whether, well, I would like to say that the North Carolina Bay Area Women's Festival did a really successful reading of, or performance of Natural Shocks, the Lauren Gunderson play, which works great on camera. It's great. It's perfect. It's this dispatch from a basement in a crisis moment. I am working on a couple of things. I don't know if they'll be good. We're still trying to figure out how to make them work. But I have produced an event that I call Writer Boogie in the past. I would love any technical help on this, or any just thoughts about what would make it more fun. The basic idea is that 5 playwrights get together, write a play together overnight, and it's 10-scene play, and each scene ends with the title of a song, which then everybody stops the play and jumps up and dances. And so we can easily, because we're writing the play right now, or in a 24-hour period, whenever we start, we can design the play to make sense as 5 people that are not in the same physical space. We can just pick a topic that will work for that. So what we're trying to figure out is how to make it really fun for people who are watching to get up and dance with us. And we're not sure, like, is that we play the video of the song in that moment and everybody dances to the video, or is it like we play ourselves dancing by ourselves? Or does that feel lonely, or does that feel fun? Or like, can they turn their camera on so we can see them dancing? Does that make it more fun? So we're trying to just figure out what will actually maximize the fun of this event. Then I have a couple other projects that I'm not totally sure how I'm gonna make them work, but that's the one I'm trying to fast track. So I hope you'll all join us when we figure it out.
Awesome. I'm seeing multiple hands up. Again, I've already said, I don't want to call on people. And yet, how do we manage our conversations in these group settings? So I'm gonna lean into it. And I apologize for not being equitable in terms of sequencing of hands. I'm just going to pick one of the random hands I have witnessed. And that random hand is Rebecca's hand that I witnessed. Please go right ahead.
Hi, that sounds awesome, Erin.
Wait,
and I have been leading
I'm so sorry, Rebecca. I'm going to interrupt just to do a process note. I don't know if you all can see this, but Rebecca raised her digital hand, which is different than the practice we've been doing, which has been raising our actual physical hands that are visible if you're using if you have your video camera feed on. But there is a way to go into the, if you go into your like participants button, you can like actually raise a digital hand, and it puts a little blue icon that lets me know you've raised your digital hand. All right, go right ahead, Rebecca.
No worries. Yeah, I like practicing the new things I'm learning all the time on Zoom, so I like to just see if it happens the way that I think it will. I actually had some experience, and Phil Lowery was involved in this. We were in the middle of a stage reading workshop of our adaptation of King Lear when we got the shelter-in-place order. We moved everything inside. We did do the reading online, and we are writing up a blog post on some best practices, better, our practices, what we learned, what worked for us, during that, including putting up some little subtitles for scene changes, making sure that people removed the non-video participants so they would just see the people in the scene. We tried some costume changes. Phil was really good at costume changes. We tried some other things and it was fun, and our very tiny audience stayed with us for 3 hours. So nobody left, which was astonishing to me. I thought everyone would get bored after an hour and a half of staring at it, but they didn't. They loved it, and they wrote really long emails afterwards saying, "Oh my gosh, that was like, it was like theater." And we kind of got a theater high afterwards. So it was like theater. It was live, and it was full of glitches and mistakes in a wonderful way, the way that theater can be. It was not highly technically produced. So we're curious about that. We were also in the middle of a stage reading for Carolina Morones' play based on the work of Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. And we are really committed to getting that up, but I've put a little pause because I think we want to take a next step with that. It's part of Bay Area Women's Theater Festival. So Mickey, we're working on it and it's gonna be there. We just think we can do a little bit more because it's a new play. We can really look at it as a Zoom play. So Carolina is a wonderful, creative, amazing human, and she's gonna figure this all out. So we went very much from like a very in-person movement-based, because she's a movement person, movement-based piece to looking at what that looks like. And the little tiny thing on Erin's thing is that I've been leading a kindergarten sing-along at 8 a.m. every Friday morning, and it is absolutely chaos, but it's good to have all the cameras on and all the mics open, even though we cannot be in unison and we're a complete mess, because the energy is so warming and wonderful for those kids to be with each other. So it's okay if it's a mess. It's gonna be a mess, and it's okay. That's my thing. Thanks.
Can I just do a shout out for a practice that embraces the effective latency with musical collaboration in these places? I feel like you might have found the magical way to actually make group singing work. It's to be okay with nobody singing at the same time and it being all over the place. Oh, bandwidth latency. All right, so I'm seeing other folks have raised their hands, and my question is, do I see an order to them? I don't. So I'm just gonna say Ariella. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand the discomfort with being like, I'd hold too much power. One thing that I wanted to share was like a very small way that I like had hope about where the possibilities of theater in this time are going. I had a friend from college who I haven't talked to in a number of years, but there was a pop-up group of theater artists I'd worked with in LA who started doing these virtual play readings. And so I connected with this old friend of mine and we cast it in like a day. And it was like, I got the script. He was like, I've never read this out loud. I wanted to do a reading in New York, but you know, we can't gather. And I'm trying to figure out what it means to like be a director when like how, yeah, what does that mean in terms of like guiding a process, even if it's play development? But we got it up. We did it for a very, very small audience, Zoom stream to Facebook Live. But having done that was like a really gratifying reminder of like, yes, we can continue to do theater. We can continue to make art. And I'm on a totally separate note, I'm excited about an idea that Sherry Miller had, who's working with us on the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival we were working on the 24-hour theater marathon event, Amplify, and with her vision and guidance, developing a series of interviews, like podcast style, amplifying different artists who are part of our event. And until we can get back in the physical space, to have a way to share people's process and unique artistic just being. Excited to see what that will turn into. Rebecca, excited to hear about your music class. I'm trying the opposite thing, the Facebook Live thing, where like I'm sort of singing along with kids who are I'm not able to hear them, but I'm kind of hoping to move to a more chaotic Zoom format for the next mini session, but glad to hear other people are experimenting with that. Thanks.
I just saw Michaela do a thing. Was there someone else with their hand raised that I've missed? All right, please go right ahead. Michaela.
So as Erin said, the Natural Shocks was really successful as a virtual performance. And the previous one that they did, Albemarle by Caridad Fitch, I thought was also quite successful. There were 4 actors, but they each, it was a lot of monologues, so it sort of used one face at a time on the screen. But my play, Lady Scribblers, is a real ensemble piece, and so I'm going to try to work with multiple Zoom faces and with people entering and exiting by turning their cameras on and off. We haven't had a rehearsal yet, so I'm not quite sure how it's going to work, but that's my plan. Also, I've got 6 out of the 9 actors signed on from the production to participate, and then we're going to cast the other 3 out of North Carolina with the women that I'm working with there, so that we make it really a co-production. And the other thing I started thinking about is I know how short attention span I get when I'm watching stuff online, and I was thinking maybe we should break it up into at least 2 parts, like do an act 1 and an act 2 at different times. You know, tune in on Thursday for the rest. I thought that might give it a little something. And just you know, thinking about clothing and lighting and all those things, and how much, I mean, I wrote this play, I did not direct the production, but my director has got too much else going on, so I'm planning to direct this, and I'm definitely looking for simplifying ideas and ways to sort of make it happen so that it doesn't become overwhelming to me, and whether it's even worth doing when I'm so lucky that I did open and had 3 performances, for which I'm so grateful. But I feel like in this new medium, there's a lot of people that I would really like to share it with and that would like to see it, and I'd love to hear it happen again. So that's where I'm at, sort of putting the pieces together, but haven't pulled the trigger yet to have a, oh, why did I use that horrible image? But to have a rehearsal and actually schedule something yet.
Isn't it funny how our language is just scattered with aphorisms and phrases where you're like, oh, wait a second. That thing I've been saying my whole life indicates I live in a horrible dystopia. Wow. It's just a thing with language. I love it. So I'm going to share real fast. And I'm going to ask my partner, would you please share the story of Curbside Theater? I really would love for you to share the really creative producing solution that I feel like, because when I say transmedia, I'm not just saying computers. It's not just computers, it's all media. So it might be to do a transmedia production or cultural producing exchange with people who are at a distance. It might require postcards and mail and like DVDs or something. I don't know what those more analog ways of being able to exchange art can be. Although I do know that I did weird postcard art back in the day. You know, you get the postcard, you'd add your piece of art to it, then you'd send it off to a stranger. So I feel like there's all kinds of possibilities, not just computers, beyond streaming. But before I pass the mic to you to talk about Curbside Theater, I thought I would just share, I've been going to stuff and seeing things every day. So I've got this list of different cool things, right? So several of us have already spoken about our own practices of, I'm sharing my work over Instagram. It's interesting accessing theater through Instagram, especially like, for instance, with the 24-hour play festival, where many of those plays were written specifically to lean into the digital interface. So the story that I'm receiving as an audience member is the story of a person recording themselves, and then I get to witness that recording. So that was pretty cool. And I've gone to the DJ Nice parties on Instagram as well, which has been super fun because they're live in real time. So while DJ Nice is like doing like cool music and stuff, and I'm by myself boogie dancing in my home, we're also commenting in the chat, hitting those heart buttons and like buttons. So there's that action going on, leaving very silly comments, pretending that we're actually in a club, being like, hey, I see you. The DJ's actually name dropping us, being like, yo, Claudia, looking good. He can't actually see me. It's all pretend. It was fascinating. It was super fun. All right, I'm gonna pass the mic to you and cross out those 2 stories I just told. So there are several organizations that are producing readings via Zoom. I'm excited about the work that ACT Theater is doing. They are with their MFA students. So they had their MFA student, they had 3 shows that were supposed to be happening in the recent future. And one play is going to be staged as a live Zoom play. So that means everything is happening in real time. The words live, it's hard to know like what live means anymore, but like it's happening in real time, actors creating work, stage managers queuing stuff, doing all of that, while the audience is also watching it. And they're going to be broadcasting from one person's computer, so they're able to do clever things where you can do like speaker view and have somebody look like they're talking to the other person next to them. Which I think should be fun, because I love, like, you know, just experiment with looking down and left to the right. This view can be a lot of fun. You can do a lot with this little square. And that director was somebody who's a former YouTube artist, who has experience in some of the visual languages of the computer. I actually think that media literacy, or not media literacy, but like this kind of vocabulary, it's different for YouTube and computer stuff than it is for like big movie stuff. So we're all learning. But he definitely has those skill sets that he's bringing to the game, which I think is going to be super useful, and I can't wait to witness the work. A second play is going to be produced as a radio play. My question now is it a radio play or an audio play? I believe a radio play is one that is received just through audio. There's no visuals, but that audio is being recorded in real time. So it's being done at the same time. That's a radio play, as opposed to an audio play that can be edited. I don't know what they're doing. And the third person's going to be recording it, recording people doing their dialogue by themselves, and then editing it together themselves and presenting it in a more traditional sort of broadcast fashion. I look forward to seeing what all of these things turn out to be. All right, so we've got 30 more minutes left in our conversation. Does anyone want to share another, I saw this practice, I saw this, like, I'm glad somebody mentioned Twitch, because like that's what Twitch is. Like, Twitch is literally broadcasting the entertainment from your home. So I'm glad someone's naming that as a good platform. But does anyone have any other case studies they want to share, or do we want to have a conversation? Excellent. Let's have a conversation. Checking in, did somebody want to have a different conversation than the one we suggested? Like, did someone say, hey, let's talk about money? Or I'm just returning to the notes to see if anyone dropped anything in here to say, let's talk about other stuff.
Someone mentioned something about, maybe it was Rebecca, about the length of time, maybe screen fatigue as a topic.
Yeah, that was one of my thoughts. Someone had brought up doing a piece by piece performance, and I'm curious about that. We're still learning what our fatigue time is, I think.
Yes, so we've got screen fatigue time, or producing around the challenge of screen fatigue. We've got live streaming versus edited material. And I like the question of, is the excitement of live streaming more like live theater? So the first sort of frame of the conversation that we had suggested was, what are the things that are so important when we're in the physical space, that we feel like we need to translate to the digital space, and how do we translate them? Like, for instance, I was like just talking about like lobby time. How do you have a gracious entering and exiting time? How do you even do that? You know, I'm just going to say, folks,
Okay.
call on yourselves, unmute yourselves, and try to self-manage.
This was my experience with Lear, if it's useful. We did do the thing on Zoom because it was a Zoom play and it was live, and everyone was individually calling in, including the audience. It was not live streamed. You had to be able to get into the meeting to see it, because I'm still a little unclear on what equity is doing about live streaming, or if they have any jurisdiction whatsoever, because it could be not. But we had people, I waiting roomed the audience. So I had half an hour with actors, like they had their half-hour call, and we did some discussion, and then we could choose when to let audience in. And then we had done an email orientation for audience, and then we did a live curtain speech orientation for audience from our director and from me as the stage. I was really stage managing, and I think my big learning was you absolutely do need a stage manager, because we're all still learning, and I had to mute and turn off video for some of the audience. Eric Ting calls them the P2. So the participant P1s are the performers and crew, and the P2s are the folks really there to listen. And I kept them all turned off video and turned off of audio until the very end. And then I turned them all on, and they could applaud, which we really felt the loss of, honestly, throughout. We wished we had laughter and sighs and all that stuff throughout, but we got a little at the end, and then we had a Q&A discussion. I think there could be some ways using the chat for audience to express applause, because actors crave like feedback during the process. And so next time I will encourage like signals and things in the chat to say, yay, you know, love that, whatever. I'm also working on using ASL to do audience, you know, this, me too, because it's super, it means a lot when you visually see it. And our kindergarten, I have a kindergartner, and our kindergarten teacher is actively teaching that now as a way of keeping their mute so they don't all chat at once. And then also letting them, you know, do, woo, you know, whenever they like something someone else says. So it's really, ASL is a great tool for us right now. Yes, nah. So all of those things. Those are some of my learnings from the lobby space. It would be nice if the audience could hang out together in the lobby space. I don't know how to do that. So who knows?
I can build off of, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Tanya. I was just, I thought of a couple things. One is that I work doing live giant site-specific puppetry, like a show in the Marin Headlands many years ago. Just keep a long story short. We sort of traveled around the space, and the audience moved with us, but we had a radio, 2 different channels. One was the stage manager calling the whole show for us, and the other line was the audience. So I'm wondering if we can develop technology where doing just what you needed, Rebecca, which is to have the stage manager channel where we're all on now, and there's a lot more ability for the sort of backstage liveness that needs to occur, and then the sort of front of house audio channel. You know, I think if somehow we could get that technology, that would add a whole other level to this. Thank you for sharing that. That was exciting just to hear about. And then I'm also wondering if on a stage managerial level, if you could just like choose moments for everybody's audio to be on, just to be able to kind of like increase that audience presence.
Yeah, I'm going to try it again and do some of that. So yes, I think that could be.
Tanya, and then Phil.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on what Rebecca said, because for the Poetry Slam, we also used a waiting room, and that was helpful for each of the poets to be able to test their mics. It's kind of what we do in a theater space before we let in the audience proper. It allows for confidence building for folks who aren't very used to Zoom or performing like in this tightly constrained space. And during the 7-minute like bio break that we did in the 2.5-hour show, we had music, which was thanks to my colleague Ian Kedeku in the first one. Kind of intuitive, it's what we do at the Drake Hotel, but playing music over Zoom while people's cameras are on or off, it just adds a little ambience if anyone is coming, and encourages folks to stick around for the second half. And regarding endings, this is still in response to Claudia's question. I know that at a poetry slam, it's a super communal and welcoming space. So one of the things I did at the end is I said, we also had active listeners. So I said, I'm gonna leave the room open while I clean up the physical space. So I muted myself, I turned my camera off, I went around and finished up, and I said, if you wanna send a private note, you can send it in the chat to this active listener, Will, or that one, etc. So that was useful, and I noticed the numbers dwindle, and I should have said, hey, I'm gonna cut it off now, because I eventually just cut it off, but that was my own transparent learning. And we did have the chat as a real-time feedback for poets performing. And that worked. I encourage poets who are comfortable to use that format to pay attention to the chat, and if it would be distracting to them to not do it, but we have 3 minutes and 10 seconds for our performances. If you go over that 10-second grace period, you may be familiar, you're deducted 0.5 for every increment of 10 seconds that you go over. Never mind the math, but what that means with Zoom is that if you have a 10-second interruption where you like, lag, we had that happen a couple times. What I had said ahead of time to make it clear and to try it out is that you could lag. I would give you a 10-second period where you would have to notice on your own or through the chat. So it was to your advantage to pay attention to the chat. And so, some folks did say like, should I start again? Because someone in the chat said start again. I had to unmute myself quickly, use the spacebar and say, hey, you've still got 3 minutes and 10 seconds. So maybe back it up just by 10 seconds and carry on, which is kind of what poets do when they forget the poem. So trying to just show how some of those things that we do in real life can, with some finessing, be translated into this virtual Zoom room. And did we ask for virtual tip jar donations? Yes. The first time we did it kind of beginning, middle, and end. Oh, and we have a slam master at the slam. So that was a person, last time some of you met my colleague, Alyssa Ginsburg, she was monitoring the chat more closely once I became sort of distracted by it because we had 80 people sending emojis and quoting lines of poetry and like offering this overwhelming, wonderful feedback. So we did eventually put, we did it more the second time, the notes, thanks to those who donated, of how you could, through our PayPal link, make a donation with a simple click through, or in Canada, you can like email money, and that's, maybe a 2 or 3 step process. So we brought in more at the second slam once we added the PayPal than at the first, when we just dropped it beginning, middle, and end, but not break even yet. That's obviously not the point, but we're kind of tracking like, when will this be viable? Yeah.
Yeah, I got to say, I paid to attend the poetry slam, and
Thank you.
I loved being able to compensate the entertainment I'd enjoyed. I was like, this is great. Yay, PayPal. I don't enjoy PayPal, but I enjoyed it in that moment. Phil is next, but you had said something I wanted to shout out. Oh, chat functions. This conversation right now is a lot about Zoom. We do need to keep in mind that Zoom is not the only platform, and to every video conferencing platform has its own pluses and negatives. So like some folks are doing stuff through Google Hangouts, some are using GoToMeeting. Folks are working things out in all kinds of different ways. But just a quick tip about Zoom. When you private chat someone, it's private to everyone who's looking at the chat right now. But when I download all of this, I see everything. No one's ever said anything naughty in a chat, but I have heard through the grapevine some friends who were in other meetings, or they were like, folks were having some deep DM exchanges, not realizing that they would become public a little later. So just letting y'all know. That private chat it's private, but not forever. Another note about the chat function is, for folks who join the meeting late, their chat function is blank. So if at the top of the meeting you post your Google Doc, your dot, 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 it means somebody who joined late is going to need you to repost it. So it's always a good practice too, if you're sharing resources, put them in a couple of times throughout if you've got rolling entries or exits. I have a colleague, I just did one of these calls with a colleague who's blind. And one of the lessons I learned was, because I use the chat a lot. I'm always chitty chatting and in multiple screens. It's my comfort place. But I learned that their software reads the chats out loud. So it was actually a disruption for that person, because they would stop being able to hear what was happening verbally through the video, and then they would have to hear the chat. So that was just a lesson I learned in case you've got blind users. That's a thing to keep in mind. All right, great resource. Can't wait to look at that. Passing the mic to Phil.
Hi. Okay, well, two things. One was about the virtual tip jar, and I see Rebecca is just posting something about that, because the question I have had is, how easy is it to make these virtual tip jars visible and available if people are in the middle of watching this thing? Like if I'm watching something, I don't want to have to stray away and try to find how do I tip, like was afterwards. And I still have trouble finding these. I haven't spent a lot of time really looking at them yet, but I know there are people whose online content I know is there. I intend to watch, and I want to know that I can pay for it eventually once I figure out how. So I don't know what's the easiest way to just to make the links always visible somehow. I kind of wish there were a place at the bottom of the screen where you could just sort of park, a tip jar that's always there. That was one question just to think about. But then the other, thank you for that. The other thing is Zoom specific, and that goes back to the thing about the waiting room. I did want to follow up with what Rebecca was saying about how useful that call was for the actors. And I think it's also really useful for the audience getting used to the whole thing and building up anticipation. I think it would also be great if you can have one of your P2s going back and forth and checking in the audience while they're waiting. What I did not know is that in the waiting room, they cannot interact with each other. And if that's the case, I might suggest that maybe we want to think about using a breakout room as our waiting room. I know people can join and be automatically put into a waiting room, and I don't know if you can necessarily do that with breakout rooms. But if you want the audience to be able to have a social experience while we're waiting for the show to start, maybe they can be moved into a breakout room specifically as the lobby. And meanwhile, we are backstage in another breakout room, and then finally merge the two together going forward. I mean, that was just a suggestion for keeping it social going forward while people are waiting. That's all from me.
I loved that. Yes, yes, yes. I think that's a really clever thing to do, to have a breakout room set up, because you are correct. The waiting room function, I think it silos folks so that you're waiting, but you're kind of waiting by yourself. It's weird. So yeah, breakout room. Make your own lobbies. We should experiment with that. Maybe with next week's meeting, I will create a lobby for us to hang out in, and then I will officially open the house, and then we can see what that's like. I love it. I posted the question tip jar versus paywall, and would love to hear folks' opinions. We have like another 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna close us down so we can transition to the other beautiful things we have to do for our day. But we have another 15 minutes. Let's keep talking.
I just wanted to share, I guess, personal reaction to the tip jar versus paywall. I feel like during this time, a lot of folks who are out of work maybe don't have the extra money to put towards tickets and things, but lots of people are feeling very generous and want to give. So I don't know exactly how the finances end up balancing out, but like ethically, I'm leaning towards more tip jar model rather than paywall. I mean, there are certain things that certainly I would consider paying to access, and I think maybe it's on a case-by-case basis, but cool. Erin just said paywalls can have a $0 option. So then in that case, I mean, and I don't know a lot about paywalls, but if there's a $0 option, like it sort of feels more upfront, but some people are inspired to give at the end. Like, it's like once you experience it, you're like, wow, that was really amazing. And I think it's the same exact discussion that everyone has about, like, do you pass the hat or, I love the sliding scale option. Actually, I saw on I think ACT, American Conservatory Theater, had different ticketing level options for their online video streams. I didn't end up purchasing one, but I was like, oh, good, that makes me feel better about this. Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at.
What I've found very interesting about poetry slam venues is they often have multiple ways to compensate the people who are involved in those cultural productions. So you pay a door price to get into the space. That $5, it's usually a very small price point, and it's covering sort of just the admin costs. Generally, for a lot of these poetry slams are taking place in spaces that they're not renting. So another piece of the economic exchange that's taking place is users buying food while they're there. Like you're at a restaurant or a coffee shop, you buy some drinks, and so that money that you're spending is compensating the venue. Although sometimes the poetry slams have to pay for the venue. But then there's always a third moment inside that cultural production that I love, which gives me the opportunity to put my money directly in the hands of the performer. If I really like their performance. And then of course, there's that other layer of exchange that's like gift economy, where, well, I don't know if it would be gift economy. I just know that like, I'm broke, I can't afford to like pay y'all a bunch of money, but I've got a chapbook and we can trade. So I'm curious about all of these different methods of exchange. I also want to name the deep irony of the site Trickle Up, which is amazing and beautiful, and it's a great project that I can't access. I can't afford to pay that monthly fee to see that cultural production that's supposed to help people, I think, like me. So I'm just, thank you, Erin, for naming that you can create zero as a way of paying, but you do need to find ways to create direct paths for people to compensate the labor. And I feel like that's on us. Like we have to demand what we need, even as we're giving people the opportunity to appreciate our work for free. I just did a speech or something. Anybody else want to talk?
I can respond just with a footnote that our second feature poet had a book that was available online, Donnie Jackson from LA, so people were able to support that artist directly. So it was really nice to see some of those levels of interaction and compensation translating.
I'm also curious about pay scales. I know that when there was a short period of time where you could access movies online for a really low price point, because I think their logic was, oh, you pay more to go into a theater. Then they figured out, actually, you're paying for convenience. You don't want to go to the theater. I'm going to charge you even more. So like there are some movies, and also it's a sliding scale, because it's like, oh, it's a really popular movie. You're going to have to pay $15 to have access to watch it for a very short amount of time. You don't even get to own it. I'm super curious about how we are setting our price points and what we feel are reasonable price points for digital exchange.
I think people are used to entering into all the manner of online platforms for free, with the idea that later at some point you will be charged something once it has basically been incorporated into your lifestyle in a way that you cannot no longer envision being without. You know, my Google storage, my, you know, all the online cloud storage that I now pay for, you know, for example, you know, maybe there is that as well. There is this moment, and there is highlighting the crisis for those who can afford to pay the higher price ticket, or even the ticket that you would have paid in the theater. And then there's all the way, you know, to zero. But in the long run, if we are gonna like create a new format for theater, like what is the way that we create it in a way that it creates it's a loyalty program, or a way of how does it incorporate into your lifestyle so that it's no longer novice, but it's just a thing that you go to for entertainment. So those are some things I'm wondering.
I'm thinking about, like, that was a great thought, Deborah, and I was thinking about like the fact that I did the free Zoom for a little while and then upgraded to the annual $159 membership, best thing I ever did in my life. But I was like, take my money. I need this right now. And I think that, you know, imagine offering like, here's the first 30 minutes of Lady Scribblers, but to see the rest, we actually need you to consider a donation on this sliding scale. And I you know, being sensitive to those who really are unable to do that at this time. So I think that's part of the stickiness, is figuring out how to support those who need this in their lives and yet really are just super struggling. But yeah, and I noticed that a lot of like Zoom was like, oh, have a free professional membership, but now we're done with that. So now you got to pay. So they did it right in the beginning and then they took it away. So this is an important thing to think about in terms of how to become essential, or, you know, acknowledge that we already are essential.
I can share our thinking around that, which is that when we thought about moving the slam online, we already have had live coverage for many years through Twitter, just like one line per poem or a picture per artist, maybe the scores. So in some ways, Twitter would have been like a natural platform for us to kind of cross over on, or Instagram. We also will usually do a photo or a video per poet if we have the capacity in our collective. So that is partly like where our audience already is, but we did want to bring people from that like scrolling or passing by and thinking about us to a more intentional space. So that's why we moved to Zoom. If people get, or when people get used to that platform, I think we may, you know, we've had discussions that aren't public yet, but about when does it make sense to set up an Eventbrite and then only share the link when people contribute, you know, and maybe still using a $1 to $7, you know, because $7 is what we charge in person model that still creates, we don't turn anyone away in person. So we want to make sure we don't turn anyone away online, but it's about trying to meet our audience where they're at, while also having a space that actually can hold the show itself. So that's how I think for now we're focusing so hard on using Zoom skillfully that I'm really looking forward to, like, and I consider doing this, what does it look like to hit live, go live on Twitter while being live on Zoom? It's a little bit overwhelming for me as an embodied person, but theoretically we can have multiple devices and be live on Instagram, live on Twitter, and live on Zoom. And
I have participated in those.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot, but it's cool because it allows for different ways to interact with the cultural production. Of course, with latency, it does mean that each platform is sharing it with a slightly different time period. So if you're actively inside the event, Zoom feels like the thing that's in real time. Facebook Live is lagging. But I wanted to be able to comment on the Facebook Live because I recognize that's seen by my followers. So my followers on Facebook could potentially be like, what did Claudia say? What is she doing? What is this thing? Let me check this out, which wouldn't be possible in the Zoom, but it was a lot. Well, my colleagues, in our last 5 minutes together, I'd love to close this out just by hearing, what do we want? What do we need? And I'm saying this out loud. We will be doing this again next week, mostly because a lot of people who were here last week were like, oh, good, make sure it's recorded. I'm going to be there in the next week. And I do feel like there's more conversations to be had. There's a lot of things you didn't talk about. Like, one of the things that we could talk about is dark path design in digital design when it comes to monetization. So like the thing where you make something that's not that great, so that somebody is motivated to buy the thing that's great, or you make something that's only partially accessible until you pay the money. Like, we should talk about all of these different ways of motivating online behaviors, because that's a thing we're going to be doing. But in the meantime, let's just shout out, unmute yourselves as you will. I trust you to manage yourselves. What do we want? What do we need for these future gatherings and conversations, or maybe just from the universe?
Union stuff. Thank you for putting that in the chat, Claudia. How are we dealing with equity and SAG-AFTRA with willingness to pay the artists, but just how are you going to let us?
Protocols. I enjoyed a lot of the conversations around the actual how this is working, you know, and the breakout rooms versus the waiting rooms versus, you know, what are the ways that we interact with audience in this format.
Yeah, some of those nuts and bolts. I was thinking, if we were to do our story slam that we do annually online, how could audience members vote anonymously?
Yeah, and practice. I love the idea that you can put us in breakout rooms next week. And I'm thinking of I'm talking to Mickey offline going, can we practice this week? Because I think each of us having practice, or either that or having an expert talk us through, like, here are all the things, here's the list of things if you're trying to do this. This is how many people, like if you're adding Twitter, you're going to want probably another stage manager that's just doing the Twitter stuff, right? Just all of those things that we wouldn't know as newbies, so that the first time we do it, we don't suck and then give up.
Just thinking about media, music, video, things like that. If we're thinking about producing, I'm starting to think of like friends who are in broadcast and that sort of things, and wondering, well, gee, are there ways to like feed music directly into the system, as opposed to playing it on some speaker and hoping your computer microphone can pick it up? Or if we want to, you know, produce something that has a moment where we need a graphic or something other than simple screen sharing. I mean, I wonder if there's some, I don't know whether this platform or some other platform will make that kind of online production easier going forward.
I'm building in reminders to get up and stretch and move your body. It's really difficult for me physically to be at the computer for these long periods of time, and I just do it because I'm like, get into it and want to be focused, and then I'm like, ow. So I don't know. I have to set my own reminders, but how can we help support each other to remind each other to do that?
I think camera angles were mentioned. I had questions regarding, like, I think it's kind of fun to think about. I taught acting for the camera for several years. It's just like, you know, is it a wide shot? Is it a, you know, Claudia mentioned some stuff about how to use your frame, you know, I don't know. I'm just bringing it up as something that was touched upon, that kind of like, it's that going down that path of thinking about camera angles, how far away you want your actors to be. You know, those things are all major considerations about how the curation of our art online.
Yeah, this is something that's coming up in our acting classes, that because most people either have a laptop or a phone that they're interacting with and attempting to do it. So how do you, using using this particular camera, it's not like working for a regular camera. So there's really specific things that we're playing with how do we enhance the emotional tenor when you don't see the full body. So there's a lot of things we're missing. We're really missing, well, I am personally really missing non-verbal cueing, because I get this little box and I've got just a talking head, which really upsets me. But if you pull back on the laptop camera, it's not a good view of the full body. It's not like being on a film. So playing with using this camera or a phone camera, and, you know, it's really interesting how that, exactly. When you move in, what does that do? You know, it's really fun. So there's lots of ways in which we can secretly be fun with that, but it takes practice and play, and, you know, disappear.
Yeah, let's have some fun times. Let's have some fun practice. I don't know.
Has everyone had a chance to share the thing they think is important?
I wanted to share that I performed in an online open mic a few weeks ago, and I decided that the acoustics would be better if I dragged my laptop in a closet with me. And I had some interesting environment, you know, just the ambient visual was pretty cool and kind of spooky, eerie. And I left the table and my little chair in there, and I plan to do more quasi performances, solo pieces in there. And the acoustics were great, especially if you pick a corner to speak into, the sound reverberations maximally better.
All right, my colleagues, it has been a pleasure spending time with you. I feel like my practice has been deepened and enriched. I appreciate your time. I got a Zoom account. I got a little time. We're going to do this again that same time next week. You are totally invited. In the meantime, we will be, Kholoud and I are going to take the video. We're going to put it on the YouTube, and we're going to put a link to the Facebook. We will email you links and things from this, and we'll also be dropping as many links as possible into that Google Doc meeting notes, just to kind of repeat some of the things people have been talking about. Tammy, if you have a link to your performance practice and you want to drop it in the doc, please feel free. In the meantime, you are released into the rest of your days. It was a pleasure working with you. I'm going to stay on here. I'll be the last one to leave, because maybe you want to do like a quick debrief at the end. All right. So we're going to stay on, but y'all can leave. Goodbye.